it got quite late. I had a work Christmas party today. I was out rather late at a couple rums and cokes. So, this is a video I've had on the back burner for a little while. And it seemed like a good substitute, and I will do the Football League tables video in 2 days. 2 days away. But today I want to talk about my 10 favorite actors. Now, these aren't the actors that I think are the best actors. That would be a completely different list, although there would be some crossover. But just my favorites who I like seeing in films, and actors who, if there's a movie that I wasn't really gonna go see it, or maybe I was on the fence about it, but I see that they are in it, then I will decide to see it. 2 notes. First of all, this is just gonna be male actors. I will do a separate video at a later date where I do my 10 favorite actresses. Just because it was hard enough cutting people off of this list to get it down to 10. I started with a list of 20 and had to cut out half the names. If I also added actresses to that list, it would have taken me forever, so I'll do that in a separate video. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So we're gonna start off with number 10. And this is a guy that he's never really been a leading man in Hollywood. But every time I see him in a movie, I feel like he's always kinda solid. And he feels like he has really pretty decent range. And that's John Leguizamo. He was in both the John Wick movies as the mechanic. He kind of plays this sort of, I remember him being quite funny in sort of an offhand way in those films. He did the voice for Bruno in Encanto. Encanto is one of my favorite of the more recent Disney films. Honestly, the last Disney animated feature I really liked was Princess and the Frog. And that was the last one that they did in 2D. I love that movie, Princess and the Frog, but of the newer ones, I think Encanto is one of the better ones. Coco as well is up there, and he was the voice of Bruno in Encanto. And then he was in what is my favorite feel-good movie ever, which is Chef. And John Leguizamo was great in Chef. That's one of my favorite movies that it's kind of just a casual, relaxing, you don't have to be super invested in the plot. It's not dramatic, just an easy watching type film. And he was great in that. Number 9 is Jamie Foxx. And I feel like Jamie Foxx is a guy who he hasn't done a ton of films, and at one point he had his music career as well. I don't think he's still making music. But I feel like so often when he does do a film, I usually am pretty happy with his performance. Django Unchained, of course. He was absolutely fantastic in that. I think that was his first time being the leading man in an action film. I'm not 100% confident in that, but he was great in Django Unchained. Collateral. If you've never seen Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx, it is a fantastic film, amazing sound design, done by the same guy who did Heat That's My Briefcase scene is probably one of my favorite gun shootout scenes ever. That and the Heat shootout. Jamie Foxx is also in the remake of The Taking of Pelham 123. Now that wasn't a good movie, really by any stretch of the imagination, but that movie was the very first Blu-ray that I ever owned. The Taking of Pelham 123 with John Travolta and Jamie Foxx, where he kind of played sort of a nerdy, like IT type guy. And he has pretty good range. Jamie Foxx, obviously, I mentioned Django Unchained, where he's playing this quite cool, deadly character, but then he obviously has that sort of soft side to him as well. But Jamie Foxx can also be quite funny. He was in that Horrible Bosses movie with Jason Sudeikis and Charlie Day, Jennifer Aniston, some other people. And I think he played like some hitman in that movie, but he was like a hitman that didn't actually want to kill people. He was just trying to like take their money. It's been a really long time since I've seen that movie, but I remember him being very funny in that. Now we get to number 8, and this is a guy that will probably climb this list if he stays on his current career trajectory. But he's a guy who's having a bit of a reconnaissance, a bit of a turnaround in his career at the moment, and that's Robert Pattinson. Now, obviously coming off of Twilight, Robert Pattinson was trying to reinvent himself and not be typecast, to not end up like Daniel Radcliffe. Although admittedly Daniel Radcliffe in recent years has done a good job of starting to move himself out of the shadow of Harry Potter. Robert Pattinson, he made some bad choices. He did that 9/11 movie, which was just weird and bad. But then he did that. It seemed like he took a bit of a hiatus. He did a Good Time with the Safdies, and I absolutely love Good Time. It's one of my favorite films of the last couple decades. And then he did what's one of my favorite films of all time, in my top 10 favorite movies ever made. He does The Lighthouse, and I remember seeing The Lighthouse in theaters. It was like a religious experience almost, because I've always loved Willem Dafoe, and we'll see him higher up this list, but seeing Robert Pattinson kind of going toe-to-toe and playing opposite of him, like that movie quickly has risen. It's in my top 10 now. Let's see where in my top 10. I have my top 10 films in my Letterboxd. Where do I have it? I update it from time to time. Also follow me on Letterboxd if you'd like to. It's DaftRaincloud. I have The Lighthouse at my 7th favorite film of all time. I'd say I might move that up a little bit higher, to be honest. But yeah, and then obviously the newer Batman films. I thought he did quite a good take on the Batman character. And I think he could climb higher up this list if his career trajectory stays this way. Matthew McConaughey 10 years ago, he probably would have been on this list. Coming off of True Detective, one of my favorite, actually my favorite television series of all time. Season 1 of True Detective, and Matthew McConaughey was having all these hits at Dallas Buyers Club, and he was having a complete career resurgence, but it seems like in the last few years he slowed down a bit, so he's actually a guy that has fallen out of my top 10. If I would have done this list, probably even 5 years ago, Matthew McConaughey would have been in here. Number 7, Harrison Ford. This is a legacy pick for me, Harrison Ford. The films he was in when he was a younger man basically were the foundation to my childhood. Star Wars and Indiana Jones. The Empire Strikes Back is my second favorite film ever made, and Harrison Ford is also in Blade Runner, which is my third favorite film ever made. So it's funny, is because when I was writing this list, I wasn't really thinking of Harrison Ford that much, but then I was looking at it and I'm like, well, Empire Strikes Back and Blade Runner are both in my top three, and Harrison Ford is the main character in one and a secondary character in the other. And I've always loved the Indiana Jones films, even the bad ones, just because fun adventure films are so seldom made nowadays. They're a breath of fresh air. And so, like, I nearly left him off this list, but then when I really was thinking about it, I'm like, man, I kind of have to put Harrison Ford on here. You know, some of his more recent stuff hasn't been the greatest, and I feel like his track record is very hit or miss, but when Harrison Ford, like, does these roles, he does genre-defining, culture-defining roles, and so he ends up at number 7 here. Number 6, and a lot of people might think this is like ironic or sarcastic, but this is an actor that I've always loved, even when he was the butt of the joke for so many people. I've always admired his ability to not care what the audience thinks and to just go for it in a weird and unorthodox fashion, and that is Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage is much derided, but I think he is a fantastic actor that truly is acting. He's not trying to do some hyper-realism thing. He's being expressionist. I forget the exact term that he invented for his acting style that he invented. Something nouveau, gothic nouveau, or something like that he calls it. But, nouveau shamanic. I just looked up nouveau shamanic. But he's been, like, inspired by German Impressionism and all this stuff, and I don't think any actor in the 21st century does the kind of stuff Nick Cage does. His movie Mandy, one of my favorite horror films of all time. I'm still waiting for Panos Cosmatos to make another movie. Beyond the Black Rainbow was amazing. Mandy was amazing. He does these really atmospheric, trippy movies, and he hasn't done anything in a while, and I'm just waiting for him to. Face Off, of course, Nicolas Cage. A blockbuster performance there, leaving Las Vegas. Drive Angry. That was a movie I watched quite a bit as a teenager because I just found it so over the top and ridiculous, but I have always unironically liked Nicolas Cage. Getting into the top 5 now, Brad Pitt. I have to admit, Brad Pitt is sort of what initially spurred on this list. I was watching Bullet Train a couple weeks back. I remember just watching, like, man, Brad Pitt is just, I feel like he's almost underrated to a certain degree, maybe because of how attractive he is. I don't know. Like, good looking guys, maybe, no, not a good actor. I don't know. But I'm like, man, the guy actually has pretty solid range. And I'm thinking of Bullet Train compared to some of the other films he did. And last night, actually, I rewatched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for the first time in a few years. And I loved his performance in that. Moneyball, one of my favorite movies ever. Probably my favorite sports movie ever is Moneyball. And then he even plays like good wartime heroes like in Fury and Inglourious Bastards, and even has some of the comedy there in Inglourious Bastards. So I was like, man, Brad Pitt is, I feel like he's kind of underrated, and he's like consistently one of the coolest dudes in any movie he's in. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit cliche to say Brad Pitt is one of your favorite actors, but looking at it, I kind of think he really is for me. Now my number 4 pick here, I fully admit there recency bias at play here. I finally got around to seeing Conclave, which was one of my most anticipated films of 2024, and I absolutely loved it, every minute of Conclave. Definitely one of my top 5 films of this year. But Rafe Fiennes coming in at number 4, not Ralph, Rafe. Of course, like I just mentioned, Conclave, fantastic movie, stellar performance from him. Schindler's List, of course, him and Liam Neeson. Schindler's List is one of those movies I watched long ago. It sticks with you, and you don't really have much desire to see it again. And then one of my top 10 favorite movies, Ray Fiennes is in The Grand Budapest Hotel. I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. If I were to do a top 10 directors list, Wes Anderson would likely be in the top 3, but yeah, Ray Fiennes, Grand Budapest Hotel, so many good roles, another actor with great range. It's funny to think that what I loved about him in Conclave is he played that role of like having authority but having doubt so well, and just look at the range Ray Fiennes has. I always, I will definitely go and see a movie specifically because Ray Fiennes is in it. Come to number 3. Number 3, we have Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington. And not only is Denzel one of my favorite actors, in basically every interview I've seen with Denzel Washington, he comes across as like a super cool, down-to-earth dude. Even though he has been so famous and, such a big celebrity for so many years at this point, the man has to be in his 60s or 70s. But he still seems very down-to-earth from everything I've seen. Obviously, interviews aren't 100% accurate portrayal, but, Denzel, he played a certain type of character for quite a while. Training Day, The Equalizer, Man on Fire. He played these very hard-nosed characters, and he did really good at that. But even look at like a more recent film, maybe not recent really, but Flight. I really loved his performance in Flight. Of course, Remember the Titans. Denzel there. He's still a little bit hard-nosed, but obviously not to the same degree as like Training Day or Man on Fire. And those Equalizer sequels, I didn't like the sequels at all, but I thought the first Equalizer was pretty good, but then once you got to 2 and especially 3, it was like, okay, like Denzel's getting a little bit too older, this one guy. It's like, maybe let's maybe call it a day with these roles, but Denzel's a guy that definitely will encourage me to go see a movie. Like, the only reason I'm really even considering going and seeing Gladiator 2 at all is because Denzel Washington's in it. Alright, number 2, we have Willem Dafoe. I came to this realization a while ago. I was like, Willem Dafoe is consistently in movies I really, really like. The Lighthouse, which I previously mentioned with Robert Pattinson. The Grand Budapest Hotel, which I previously mentioned with Ray Fiennes. The Florida Project, one of, in my opinion, the most underrated movies ever. That's a movie that should have gotten a lot more recognition when it came out. The Boondock Saints, which is one of my favorite movies back when I was in high school. I think a lot of people in my generation had that Boondock Saints phase. But Willem Dafoe is consistently showing up in movies that I really like. And whether he's playing a smaller role, like in the Grand Budapest Hotel, or a bigger role, like in the Lighthouse, I feel like whenever he is on the screen, he's commanding your attention, he's commanding your eye. And, he's in the new upcoming Nosferatu film, which I'm very excited for. He was just in something else that I watched recently. Saturday Night. He was in Saturday Night, the SNL biopic. It was as the NBC executive. It was really good in that. And actually, kind of came to the realization realization similar to how I did with Harrison Ford. It's like he's consistently stealing the show in these movies I like. And now we come to number one. This guy has pretty consistently been my favorite actor for quite some time now. And that is Christian Bale. Obviously, we have the Batman films. My very controversial opinion, and has always been that Batman Begins is the best of the three Christopher Nolan Batman films. I do like Dark Knight, but more and more, the more I've watched those movies, the more I think Batman Begins is the best of the three. American Psycho, it's a bit overdone now thanks to internet memes and such, but I love Christian Bale in American Psycho. Ford v Ferrari for a more recent film that he was in, The Big Short, where he played Michael Berry, The Prestige, I mean the list goes on and on. Christian Bale has phenomenal range. I mean he's done everything from action films to introspective dramas, comedies, everything in between, and he always can fit the bill, and he's just consistently, I feel like he elevates pretty much every movie he's in, and I will always think it was a great injustice that they finally convinced him to go and do a Marvel movie after years of him saying he didn't want to do it, and then they completely wasted his character. He barely got any screen time, and it's like, you have one of the best actors of the 21st century here, and you're not using him. Anyway guys, thank you so very much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Tell me what you think of this list. Let me know if there's any of these actors that you particularly like, or maybe some of them that I said I like and you dislike. But anyway guys, until next time,